Hey band directors, welcome to the back of the band room. And if you've ever wanted to update your stock parts but you didn't really have enough money for a percussion arranger, then I think I have some tips for you. So it takes like a lifetime to get better at writing marching percussion, and I'm by no means an expert, but I've written for between 8 and 10 schools, schools that I've taught at, and it gets better every time. And there's a few things that I think have made it better. Number one is I used to overwrite. I was definitely a victim of that. Lately, I've been writing the simplest thing I can for most of it, and that's really cleaned a lot of things out. Something that goes hand in hand with that is sticking to maybe only 2 ideas at a time. So if you're writing for snare drum and quads and basses, maybe 2 of them should be playing the same rhythm. And also, not all 3 sections have to play at the same time. So those are a few things to keep in mind. So here's 10 tips, my 10 kind of guidelines that might help, and then I'll elaborate on them in just a bit here. So number 1, make the template first. If you're writing a piece that is 80 measures long, make that 80 measure template, get all the rehearsal markings in and all the dynamics and any sort of text, if it says joyously or if it says ferociously, get all that text in there. All right. Number 2 is write the non-negotiables first. For instance, one of the high schools I teach at, they did Carmen this last season, and if the band goes bum bum bum, the drumline has to do that also. Number 3 is find what doesn't work in the stock part. Not everything in your stock part is going to be unusable. Sometimes it's just fine and it doesn't need to be reinvented. Sometimes if you just add a new sticking or drop in a few rolls over the top of the skeleton rhythm, it's good to go. What we want to avoid is having 32 measures of dot digga dot digga dot digga dot digga dot, because the composer didn't have enough vocabulary to write anything more than that. Something to look for is awkward stickings in your quad parts and mallet parts. Usually when a composer is writing those things at a piano, they don't realize it might not lay well on the keyboards. So even though I'm not going to talk about the front ensemble in this video, that's something you're going to want to look for. Quick tip for front ensemble writing that's helped me. I picked this up from my friend and teacher Paul Gavin, who, by the way, has some really good videos that help me a lot about the same subject. But the idea of writing your cymbal parts first in the front ensemble so that you have all your impact stuff covered and you don't get married to a particular mallet lick that you enjoyed writing, and you don't have to cut that part because the band needed an impact and you didn't realize that at first. So that's something to think about too. Number 4 is have some cliche vocabulary to use. Here's my list of cliches for you band directors out there. You can get a PDF of this at thebackofthebandroom.com, but I write these things into every show more than once a show. For instance, tap rolls are a really common piece of vocabulary. A tap roll is where you have a stroke followed by double stroke, so da digga 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 da. Or you could do it in triplets, and you can get a lot of use out of those. Another really cliche pattern is the over the bar line lick that you'll hear a lot of people do when the band has a big, powerful, loud note. Sometimes it's shorter, sometimes it's longer. And you can orchestrate that a few ways. You can have them play it with both hands. You can add in rim shots. Another classic big ending is the Afro-Cuban 6/8 lick, I call it. That's great at the end of a piece when the band has a long note. And the winds release on that last note. The Mars lick, is a fun thing to add in if given the opportunity. The Colin McNutt goes without saying. Number 5 is steal. Steal from DCI and WGI lines. So here is an example of me stealing. This is something I did again with that Carmen show I was just mentioning. There's a percussion feature, it looks like this. And the beginning of both the quad and the snare feature are lifted from some drum corps licks that I enjoy. So one of them is Santa Clara quad feature, and one is an RCC snare feature they did that I had learned at some point. Check out lothype.com. That's where I found so many great pieces of inspiration from top players being transcribed. Number 6 is that when the band has a long note, that is kind of the playground for the drum line, meaning if the band has notes that are very far apart and they're moving very slowly harmonically, The drumline can have more motion underneath that, more density of rhythm. So that's something to think about. And the opposite is true. So if the winds are playing very densely, have the percussionists play less dense, or at least don't add to the density. Number 8, write the easiest thing you can write 90% of the time. I learned this formula a long time ago and it changes, but usually it's roughly, let's say 70% of it should be sight readable. 20%, maybe even 25% of it should be easy if they practice, and 10 or 5% should be you're biting your nails on finals day hoping they get it, and you might have to water it down. So that kind of hierarchy really guides my writing. I'm trying to write stuff that is sight readable for the most part. Some of it they'll work on, and some of it they're going to really have to work on, and I'm still going to be nervous. Another fun concept is the idea of simple rhythms but fun stickings. Putting stickings over, let's say the rhythm 1 and a 2 and 3 and. You could go right, right, left, left, or you can go right, left, left, or you could go right, left. You know, you can put a little more demand on their hands, and it still sounds like the stock part. It's just a little more fun. So you can take that stock part and, like I said, make up some new stickings, or have your kids make up new stickings over these parts that are fun for them. And number 10, don't be afraid of an Easter egg or two. So every year I have a few Easter eggs. I always put 3 camps in. My kids know I'm a big fan of this old snare drum exercise, 3 camps. Double Beat by Murray Gusek in there. The Colin McNutt special, the Paul Rennick crescendo. So all those little things already should give you some ideas. And that wraps up part 1 of this video on writing for marching percussion. But check out part 2, where I'm going to write about 35 bars of stock part. And I'm going to apply all these concepts that I showed you here and in the Drumline Cliches PDF to this stock part. So stay tuned for that.